Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the BSB Podcast. Today, we're concluding our discussion of Broadway's The Great Gatsby, which we saw on our 2025 trip to NYC. However, before we get to the music and stagecraft, like, follow, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms at bsb.insider. Thanks again for joining us, and enjoy the show. Well, again, there's always a spoiler warning. We're going to be talking about a show and a movie and a book and things that have been around for lots and lots of years. But if you want to go into this show completely without any prejudice, without any prior knowledge, you don't want to be swayed any one direction, go ahead and save this video and come back to it after you see it, especially as the show is beginning to tour North America. But if you're still listening, we're going to talk about everything technical and musical about the show. So just to recap, last episode we talked about the story, which is set in the 1920s, and it follows our narrator, Nick, who befriends Jay Gatsby, who ends up seeking his cousin Daisy because there's a crazy triangle going on that's not a romance triangle at all. And all of the issues that arise from the complications that this romance involves. That pretty much sums it up, RJ, right? Anything you would add to that story?
I don't think so.
Okay. So let's just start with the music. So this is a very heavy music, like the musicality of the show is like that old school Broadway feel. It's kind of how it felt to me. What is your general classification of the music of The Great Gatsby?
I mean, of course, it's a jazz era, swing, big band Broadway type musical. Jason Howland and Nathan Tyson. Jason Howland, I've sung many, many, many of his songs. He's fairly well known. Nathan, I have not heard of before, but that doesn't mean anything. Could be still equally as popular. But very of course, we've got the sweeping score. That is it is a mixture of jazz, true jazz, and musical theater. So it's just a little bit more poppy jazz. I think to kind of keep the energy up and running.
It reminded me very similar to Some Like It Hot in that jazzy, but contemporary jazzy. You're very much, you just want to kind of dance to it. You want to be involved in the show. Granted, there is the big sweeping numbers. There's the slow ballads, because you cannot have Jeremy Jordan in a show without giving him at least one ballad.
Or five.
A lot of or five. There is a lot of ballads in this show. Quick though about Jason Howland, I want to ask you about, because you have recently seen a local production of Beautiful the Carole King Story, which he worked on the cast recording of that and won a Grammy for Best Musical Theater Album. How do you feel like that compares to maybe The Great Gatsby's work, its music?
Yeah, I mean, very similarly, except the kind of genre of music's a bit different, because Carole King, of course, Beautiful, the Carole King musical, obviously all Carole King music, which was singer-songwriter pop genre that got turned musical theater-esque.
Sure.
So still very, I mean, I could see a similar energy in regards to kind of keeping the story moving along, and fusing bits and pieces together. I don't think Beautiful had as many ballads, but yeah, a lot of solo numbers in this piece.
I do wonder how much the show The Great Gatsby changed from pre-Broadway at the Paper Mill Playhouse to now, especially when it came to the music. But correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy Jordan was involved in the Paper Mill Playhouse production, correct? Okay. Oh yeah, I'm looking at the list, and pretty much everybody was exactly the same. um, they had to like have made the ballads were made for Jeremy Jordan. Like I feel like that was the one thing I kind of took away from the music was like you have somebody of his caliber belting songs. You put that to use, and like they did. I don't think there's a single Jay Gatsby song that isn't just like a ballad of him singing his heart out.
Well, and you usually do like as a songwriter, you typically have some type of muse in mind or like an ideal image of who's originating that role, which is why we
Hmm.
see so many folks play similar roles on Broadway and go through a similar track, right? Like I think previously we talked about folks going from playing Janice in Mean Girls,
Sure,
and playing Elphaba in Wicked and the alignment there. Um, this would be something very similar where you're going to have the same type of person play this massive tenor role, powerhouse tenor role. Um, like, and that's just who it's built for, like intentionally. And to be fair, like there aren't that many shows on Broadway right now that I can think of that, or at least newer shows that are geared more towards men as the like kind of solo lead that I can think of. I'm probably just not thinking of all the shows I haven't seen, but um
sure.
in this same way, in this like storytelling romantic way, where you break into song for 6 minutes and then you have a 6 minute standing ovation.
For sure. Um, it's interesting because I'm looking at like his replacement, Ryan McCartan, and they both played JD in Heathers, and Ryan played Fiero in the 15th anniversary cast of Wicked, and like he played Prince Hans in Frozen. Like these are all roles that I could see Jeremy Jordan playing. Like there's that same pipeline of the type of person to play this role. Um, it makes a lot of sense. Um, with Jason Holland as well, I see that he also worked on Shucked, which makes me interested to see what's going to happen when it tours um, in
That
Detroit.
pop country pop.
So, if we're talking about the songs, is there one that like really you feel like defined the show, or that stuck out to you, or that you were drawn to, or all of the above? I feel like I'm going to start with Old Money. I'm sorry, I do have to talk about Sarah Pauly as uh, Samantha Pauly, sorry, as Jordan with Old Money. That's just like such a crowd pleaser. Granted, I did know that song prior to it, but like that just caught my attention right away. You're super engaged in it. You can't help but just want to dance. And there's like ones throughout the show too. I'm thinking of the one where it's the party that's also kind of jazzy and kind of upbeat, but like those were just some really standout moments for me. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. Yeah, honestly, before seeing the show, when I had asked around about it, that is the song that I feel like the show is known for,
Mm-hmm.
um, or the song that was the most well received. The only other song that I can think of, I don't know if it's literally called Daisy.
Oh
It's
yes, that he said
it's one of his power ballads, and it's just like him looking out, or no, for her, I think is the title.
yes, yes.
Um, and that was one that just it was an earworm for me. And usually, if there's an earworm, like that's the thing that sticks.
Why do you feel like that song was an earworm for you? Because it is a slower ballad one.
I mean, I love a power ballad, um, and I love like the really like hyper emotional, just like so intense. Which, of course, we were close enough to basically be able to see the spit come out of his mouth when he was singing that song. Um, so
Yeah. I
also
mean,
like helpless romantic, very very up my alley.
I mean, I feel like that was a really that was a big turning point for the first act was when he sang that song because he's just singing across the water to her. Like he's, you know, for those who don't know, in The Great Gatsby, he's living on one. He bought a house on the other side of the island from Daisy, his true love, who is married to Tom Buchanan. Jay Gatsby being new money and Tom Buchanan being old money, and it's just this like it's almost like a lament. He's like lamenting over her and just wanting her so bad. There's like a I don't know. I feel like we can all just remind ourselves of the pining of like we've all been there, we've all done that.
Yeah, the grand gestures, right? Like it's almost the things that you think about doing but would never actually do because they're so outrageous. But
Mm-hmm.
he did them. Like he did the thing and now he's singing about it.
For sure. Was that before or after he brings all of the stuff to the cottage? Is that before?
I think so. I think
Okay.
so.
Yeah, because at the end of Act 1 is only tea. So that's, he hasn't even done the big gesture of bringing all the cakes and all the food and redecorating the house. Um,
Yeah, because really for her it's just the explanation of what he is doing and all the things that he did do.
Absolutely. The thing that I find interesting too, about the show is the fact that Gatsby doesn't even come in until like halfway through Act 1. He's like a late entry into the show. And like he still brings down the house and he sings some great some great music. Before her is like his first moment actually that he's in the show kind of showing off.
Yeah, you kind of, I mean, of course, dramatic character entrance. You need a little bit of setup in regards to I mean, you can't talk about Daisy and talk about Tom until after you've met them. So spending all
Mhm.
that time previously to get to know everybody else and then the story goes on.
Absolutely. I think another song too that really stood out to me, and I stood out to me for I think the feeling and the vibes of it more so than like the words. But One Way Road by Myrtle, when she's like trying to walk to find Tom, and you kind of feel like this somebody on a mission who's kind of lost everything and trying to find some semblance of normal. And so I love that the show really took the time to kind of discuss different forms of love and like how Myrtle was in love with Tom, but Tom was not in love with Myrtle. And then you have the real rich love of Daisy and Gatsby. And you have the new love of Jordan and Nick. But I loved that Sarah Chase got this moment to shine a one way road, that just kind of showed how vulnerable Myrtle was, even though she was such a strong woman. And so, like, that really stuck out to me. Like, that to me was almost the defining song of the second act. As because the first act was very heavy and a lot of songs that were kind of noticeable, a lot of things that move the story along. And the second act was a lot more of those slow songs, but that one really stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, once again, the themes of the show in regards to how many of us have been in a situation where you love someone or you like someone and maybe they're with someone else or maybe they're just not showing interest and you're just kind of pining away after them or just being the most and trying the hardest to make it work. And it's just, as an audience member, we know what's going to happen, right? Like it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, unless there's some really dramatic twist, but in this case, not. Um, but knowing that the character doesn't know that, and it just
Mm-hmm.
makes it that much more intense.
What did you think of Beautiful Little Fool, which was that last song that Eva Nobledoza sings? Drake Gatsby he dies. She's back with Tom. And that was kind of her, like one of her big power ballads, was that last big song. What did you think of in that moment? Like what was kind of going through your head? What stood out about that song to you?
I mean, it's the song that we all like. Once again, it's almost like an audience pleaser
Mm-hmm.
because of the way that everything else has gone, uh, and you don't really know who you're cheering for or who you want to cheer for. So this is like the opportunity to kind of give the like atta girl without really giving an atta girl.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Sure.
but it's giving the character that moment to be like, well, here's what I'm doing because what else do I do?
Right. I've lost it all, so I'm just gonna play the game that I've always been playing. Was there somebody's singing performance that stood out? And let's take Jeremy Jordan out of this. He's otherworldly. Let's not take him into account here. I mean, obviously I think I can speak for both of us when I say he gave his all. It was fantastic. It was great to see him do that performance. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I
He's
think we could both
a league of
agree.
his own. Yeah.
Um, who else do you feel like just like was there anybody that brought the house down?
I mean, I know we previously talked about Samantha Polly as Jordan. I just really enjoyed her voice specifically. So I'm not even sure if it was the character song or just her voice, her style,
Mm-hmm.
because it was like more powerful, and I feel like I tend to lean towards that
Mm-hmm.
characterization.
For
In the
sure.
same breath, like Eva is obviously insanely talented. Her vocals and her voice in general, her timbre is just softer and very intricate, um, which of course is why she is great in that role. Um, but there were a few moments, I can't remember what song or songs it was in, where she did kind of lay it all out there, and I remember the audience being super into it. Um,
For
so
sure.
yeah, I don't know if I can say that's a couple of them, but you know,
um, absolutely. I think you're right. I think this is a very talented cast, and I think that there are some people that you come to like voices you come to like a little bit more than others. Like Samantha Polly, I was again obsessed with Six, loved her in Six. I think was she the queen when we went to go see her in Six? I think she was the Catherine Howard. I could be wrong. It might have been the time before that. But absolutely fantastic album. Do you feel like the music enhanced or overshadowed Fitzgerald's themes of The Great Gatsby?
I don't think it overshadowed them. Um, the drama of the personification type songs, usually once again, the power ballads, I think it does enhance it a little bit because you're just leaving it all out to dry. Um, and it's just when you see a person physically giving that much energy to something, like obviously you can give a lot of energy while acting and while doing the staging, but there's just something different about singing because it takes so much more, in my opinion, effort and physicality that it just adds another level to whatever the emotion is. If it's anger or sadness or happiness. So technically, I guess, long story short, I would say enhance.
Okay, I would agree. I think that's a really good way to put it. I think that it heightened everything. It heightened the entire story, and gave it something else. Like, it made it something else. It made it something more spectacular. Did you like the spectacle of this? Like Mark Brunies, who was the director, obviously he had a vision for this show. And part of that is being a spectacle, which is what we come to expect from The Great Gatsby. Did you like that, the spectacality of it?
I mean, I think it is exactly what it is. Like, I think it has to be a spectacle in order for it to kind of give that classism that is such a big theme or big plot line. Um, but and it just enhances the characters too, right? Like the depth that
Mm-hmm.
it brings to them. Um, because we do because of this kind of back and forth of yeah we're talking in the present, we're living in the present, with these characters, but they are talking about years and years ago. um, we have to be able to understand where they come from and where they are and where they're going.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Does the story have a good pace, do you think? Like I'm trying to think in my head. I feel like there's parts of it that are a little bit slow. And like maybe they're supposed to be slow, but like it felt like there's sometimes I'm like, okay, come on, let's get it going here.
No, yeah, I think Act 1 was slower than Act 2, which I feel like I say that often.
You do.
And of course, it is, like, technically usually longer, but I remember at one point, I think I did literally try to look at my watch, my invisible
Mhm.
watch that I don't actually wear, so my phone, um, because I kind of was like, "Okay, like, where are we go?" Like, it was a little bit uncertain, and having not read the book and not seen it before and not seen the movie, I was a little bit like, "So where are we?" Before even probably before we meet Gatsby, I'm like, "When is that happening?
Mhm.
And what are we doing with it?" Because we know that they're gonna get together, right? Like any good, hopeless, romantic story, but it was just like the waiting game for a minute, which of course, yes, this is based on a novel, and so you have to stay true to the story, but the pacing, there was probably a couple songs, honestly, that could have just been not there.
In fact, when you said that, I was looking at the list of musical numbers, and there was even more songs in Act One when it was at the Paper Mill Playhouse, and all I could think is, "Oh my gosh, how could this have been any longer?" Because it did feel very long. That first act was just almost obscenely long.
Well, and for a musical, there was a lot of scene work. Like,
Mhm.
for something that has so much music in it, and maybe before they didn't have scene work and it was just music, like it was music after music, kind of like Suffs, and minimal scene time. But I think that's kind of what drew this out is some of the scenes were just so slow, and the pauses and the conversations, they were just like generally slow moving. So then even the transitions from scene to scene were a little bit at they weren't quick. Like they were at the pace in which the show was going, which was
For
a little
sure.
bit slower.
What did you think of like the sets and I think we almost have to talk about the sets and the costumes and the lighting all together because I feel like again it all worked together to bring up that 1920s jazz age, which it did very well. But I think you're right that there was like almost a lot of clunkiness with different pieces of this show to put together that made that first act feel even longer. But what did you think of all of those, like the set design, the lighting, the costumes?
I mean, it was insane. I think it's one of the bigger sets, more intricate sets that we've seen, especially on that trip specifically, and in general. Like a lot of shows now, they're pretty limited. A couple backdrops, a couple props coming on and off, but this you had massive set pieces with completely different buildings coming on and off pretty frequently.
Sure.
And then of course the pool in the front, which is just like smart usage of the orchestra pit. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I thought it was very well done. I think it was appropriate. Like you have to have it be lavish because that is what it's portraying. And
Mhm.
so it has to be the most and it has to be a spectacle because that's what it literally is.
Absolutely. Do you think this show did a good job of capturing what I mean, I know you didn't read the book or see the movie, but do you feel like it captured the essence of what The Great Gatsby is?
I think so. I mean, I do need to go. I'm going to go back and watch the movie because now I am a little bit curious. Like I want to be able to compare it to something.
Mhm.
Um, but I do. I mean, in regards to the themes and the show itself, I think there's a clear message there.
Absolutely. What would you rate this?
I want to say like a B,
Questioning that. You're
B
questioning
minus,
that.
B minus. I think it depends. Like, and that's like with Jeremy Jordan as Gatsby. I'm not sure it would grade as high. It would probably be like a half grade or more lower. without him, just because it's not super memorable to me. Like, I would go see it again, but I wouldn't see it like 10 times.
Yes, 100%. This is not a show that I would go and see every time we're going to New York. I'm like, oh, RJ, we have to go see The Great Gatsby. It's not like how I was practically begging you to see Six again. You know what I mean? Like, it was cool to see once. It was cool to see Jeremy Jordan in this role. I think we even said this about like kind of like Gypsy as well. Like, it was cool to see Audra McDonald in the role. Does this show last as long without some of the big stars? There's some question marks there. I think I would go and give this a B minus too. I was debating between a B minus and a C plus. I feel like it's on that borderline of just being like, it was a good show. It was not great. It was a good Gatsby. It wasn't a great Gatsby. And so I think that it depends on who replaces these stars, and I'd be really interested to see how it does with Ryan in the role. And I know Sarah Hyland just took over for Daisy Buchanan, so like there are some big names coming in. But there's a lot of question marks kind of coming in. And with that, we are done with part 2 of The Great Gatsby discussion. Thank you so much for joining us again here in our box seats. Till next curtain call.